The moment I discovered the truth, my entire world shifted on its axis. The calendar dates that didn't align weren't just numbers. They were proof of betrayal that would destroy everything I'd built. My name is Victor McFarland, and I'm 38 years old. Each day, I wake before dawn to make breakfast for my children, Vince and Patricia, before heading to my HVAC repair jobs. My wife Paula's pregnancy announcement over dinner 6 months ago shattered our normal life, though the math never added up with her Florida girls' trip. I watched my hands tremble as I laid out the evidence one by one: hotel receipts, phone records, text messages that painted an ugly picture. Paula's final confession about a nameless stranger in a bar felt like a knife to the gut. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. The spaghetti steam curled up from the serving bowl as I set out plates for another family dinner. Our kitchen held so many memories: weekend pancake battles, holiday cookie disasters, homework sessions over milk and cookies. Tonight would add one more, though not the kind I'd ever want to remember. Patricia bounced in her chair, pigtails swaying as she reached for the garlic bread. Vince, trying to look cool at 10 years old, rolled his eyes at his sister's excitement, but couldn't hide his own grin. Paula moved around the table, ladling out portions with practiced care. "How was school today?" I asked, passing the parmesan to Vince. "We're learning about planets," Patricia announced between bites. "Did you know Jupiter has 79 moons?" "That's nothing," Vince countered. "Saturn has 82. The familiar banter washed over me as I twirled pasta onto my fork. These simple moments were what I lived for. Just us, together, sharing our day. Then Paula cleared her throat, and everything changed. She placed her hand gently on her stomach, a soft smile playing at her lips. "We're going to have another baby." The kids erupted in cheers. Patricia clapped her hands, spattering sauce across the tablecloth. "I'm going to be a big sister again." "Is it a boy or a girl?" Vince demanded, suddenly forgetting his too-cool-for-school attitude. I forced my face into what I hoped looked like a happy smile. "That's wonderful news, honey." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Dinner continued with excited chatter about nursery colors and baby names, but my mind was already spinning backward through time. While the kids helped clear the table, I pulled out my phone, fingers trembling slightly as I opened the calendar app. 10 weeks. Paula's girls' trip to Florida had been exactly 10 weeks ago. A trip I'd paid for, thinking she deserved a break with her friends. The dates lined up perfectly. Too perfectly. Later, after tucking the kids in with extra tight hugs, I found Paula in our bedroom. The same room where we'd spent countless nights planning our future, dreaming about our family. Now the air felt thick with unspoken questions. The dates don't add up. My voice was quiet, but firm. Paula stiffened, her back to me as she folded laundry. "Don't be paranoid, Victor. You're being ridiculous." "Am I? Because I've been doing the math." "Stop it." She slammed a drawer shut. "Just stop. I'm pregnant. We're having a baby. And that's all there is to it." I retreated to the kitchen, needing space to think. The faucet dripped steadily in the quiet house. Drip, drip, drip. Like a metronome counting out seconds of ugly truth. My hands gripped the edge of the sink until my knuckles went white. Behind me, Paula's footsteps crossed the kitchen floor. Then came the sharp crack of our bedroom door slamming shut. "I'll find the truth," I whispered to the empty kitchen, watching another drop fall. Morning light filtered through our kitchen window as I flipped pancakes, trying to keep my hands steady. The familiar scent of butter and maple syrup usually brought comfort, but today it just turned my stomach. Remember when Saturday morning pancakes were the highlight of our week? Patricia would always beg for chocolate chips, while Vince insisted on plain ones, claiming he was too old for the sweet stuff. "Dad, can I have extra syrup?" Patricia asked, her math homework spread across the table. Sure, princess. I slid a fresh stack onto her plate. But finish that multiplication first. Vince slouched in, backpack dragging. Mom's taking forever in the bathroom again. My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice neutral. She's not feeling well, bud. Pregnancy can do that. The word felt wrong in my mouth. After dropping the kids at school, I sat in the driveway, replaying last night's dinner announcement. Paula rushed past my truck, late for work as usual. I caught her before she reached her car. Can we talk about this? I kept my tone gentle. The timing just doesn't make sense. Victor, please, she huffed, checking her watch. I'm already running behind. Just hear me out. Count back the weeks. It's your baby. Her voice went flat, that telltale sign I knew too well. You're stressed about work, that's all. We can talk later. She was gone before I could respond, leaving me with nothing but the echo of her car door slamming. Later that week, I timed my arrival at school pickup to catch Paula's friend Beth. She was always early, always chatty. I leaned against the wall beside her, keeping things casual. How was that Florida trip last month? Paula seemed pretty relaxed when she got back. Beth smiled, scrolling through her phone. Oh, it was amazing. The beach, the spa day, though I still feel bad about that one night. My pulse quickened. What night? When we all crashed early. But Paula wanted to check out that bar down the street. Said she needed some me time or whatever. Beth's eyes widened slightly, realizing she'd said something she shouldn't. I mean, we were all just so tired from the sun. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I sat at my desk with our financial statements spread out like puzzle pieces. The hotel charges told their own story. An extra room service bill the night Beth mentioned, a bar tab that made my hands shake. Each receipt was a little knife, cutting away at what I'd thought was true. The sound of Paula's footsteps made me freeze. Paper crinkled in my grip as she appeared in the doorway. What are you doing? For a single heartbeat, the only sound was the gentle whir of my laptop fan and the blood rushing in my ears. I forced my features into neutrality. Just organizing some paperwork. Tax season's coming up. Paula lingered in the doorway, her eyes narrowing. At this hour? Better than watching TV, right? I shuffled the papers into a neat stack, careful to hide the Florida hotel letterhead. I'll be up soon. She hesitated, then turned away. Don't stay up too late. The moment her footsteps faded, I pulled up our phone records online. There it was, a string of late-night calls to a Florida number during that trip, all deleted from her phone when I'd checked it earlier. My throat felt like sandpaper as I wrote down the dates and times. The next morning, I packed Vince's lunch while Patricia braided her own hair in the kitchen mirror. The smell of burnt toast hung in the air. I'd been lost in thought, letting it go too long. "Dad, you're acting weird," Vince said, studying me over his cereal bowl. I forced a smile. Just tired, buddy. Big project at work. But the truth was, every normal moment felt like a lie now. Making breakfast, checking homework, trading jokes, it all had this hollow echo, like walking through a house you're about to move out of. That weekend, while the kids were at their grandparents', I cornered Paula in the kitchen. The afternoon light cast long shadows across the counter where we'd shared so many family meals. "We need to talk about this pregnancy." I kept my voice steady. "And I need the truth this time." She stiffened. "We've been through this. The hotel charges, Paula. The bar tab. The phone calls you deleted. You went through my phone?" Her voice rose. "You're spying on me now?" "I'm looking at facts. Numbers don't lie." "You're trying to ruin everything." She slammed her palm against the counter. "Why can't you just be happy we're having another baby?" "Because I don't think it's mine." The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. "Get out," she whispered. "Just get out." I did. Drove straight to Keisha Alvarez's office, though it was Saturday. She'd handled my cousin's divorce last year, knew her stuff. The reception area was empty, but she was there, reviewing cases. "Victor?" She looked up from her desk. "What brings you in?" I laid out everything. The timeline, the receipts, the deleted calls. Keisha listened, taking notes, her expression growing more serious with each detail. "First things first," she said, pulling out a legal pad. "We need a paternity test. The sooner, the better. And we need to secure these financial records properly." She explained how courts view evidence, what judges look for in cases like this. Every document needed to be pristine, every date verified. "Don't confront her again until we have a solid strategy," Keisha warned. "And Victor, don't move out of the house, no matter what. That can hurt your custody position later." An hour later, I walked out clutching a folder of legal papers, my mind spinning with terms like discovery and temporary orders. The weight of those documents felt like lead in my hands, but also like armor. If I was right, and deep down, I knew I was, this baby wasn't mine. And now I had the roadmap to prove it. When I got home that evening, the house smelled like fabric softener. Paula was in our bedroom, methodically folding laundry into neat piles on the bed we'd shared for 12 years. For a moment, I watched her familiar movements, the way she'd snap each towel twice before folding, just like her mother taught her. I cleared my throat. "We need to finish our conversation." Her hands stilled on a half-folded shirt. "Victor, please." "No." I pulled the bank statements and phone records from my briefcase, laying them on the bed beside the laundry. "I have everything here. The hotel charges from that night in Florida. The bar tab that doesn't match what you told me about staying in with the girls. Phone calls to a number you erased." The shirt slipped from her fingers. I remembered buying it for her last Christmas. Soft blue cotton that matched her eyes. Funny how memories ambush you at moments like these. "I've been patient," I continued, keeping my voice steady. "I've given you chances to come clean. Now I need the truth, Paula. All of it." She sank onto the edge of the bed, crumpling one of Vince's t-shirts beneath her. "What do you want me to say?" "The truth would be a good start." A tear rolled down her cheek. I felt nothing watching it fall. Her voice cracked. "I got drunk at the hotel bar. The girls had gone to bed early and I was restless. Just wanted to have one drink, maybe people watch for a while." My jaw clenched. "And? This guy started talking to me. He was, I don't know, charming? Made me laugh." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I had too many cocktails. We ended up going to his room." The ceiling fan whirred above us, stirring the cool air. From downstairs, I could hear Vince and Patricia watching TV, their laughter drifting up like smoke through the floor. "I never even learned his name," Paula whispered. "It was stupid and meaningless. One terrible mistake. A mistake." The word tasted bitter, like forgetting to pay a bill or burning dinner. "We can work through this." Her eyes were desperate now. "The baby, it could still be ours. You could be its father in all the ways that matter. Rise above it. Show what kind of man you are. What kind of man I am." The calm in my voice surprised even me. "I'm the kind of man who believed in our vows, who worked overtime to pay for your girl's trip, who trusted you enough to never question where you were or what you were doing." She reached for my hand. I stepped back. "You detonated our life with one night. Victor, don't." I moved toward the door. "I need to check on the kids." Vince and Patricia were sprawled on the living room floor, surrounded by homework and snacks, laughing at some cartoon on TV. Patricia had her math worksheet propped against her knees. Vince was absently twirling a pencil while he watched the screen. Looking at them, everything crystallized. Their world was about to shift on its axis. But right now, in this moment, they were still just kids being kids. Their stability had to be my priority. Not Paula's guilt, not my anger, not even the betrayal burning a hole in my chest. I woke before sunrise, moving quietly through our bedroom while Paula slept. The gym bag I packed made no sound. Just enough clothes for a few days, toiletries, and the documents Keisha needed to see. 12 years of marriage. And I'd never snuck around like this. But then again, I'd never had reason to. The early morning air hit me like a slap when I stepped outside. I sat in my truck for a moment, watching the bedroom window where Paula would wake up alone. Remember when that would have bothered me? Now, it felt like practice. Keisha's office opened at 7, but she was already at her desk when I arrived. She had that look, the one that said she'd seen this story before and knew exactly how to handle it. "We need to move fast," she said, spreading papers across her desk. "File for separation first, then push for court-ordered paternity testing. The longer we wait, the more complicated this gets." I nodded, my throat tight. "And the kids? We'll file for temporary custody arrangements too. But right now, focus on the separation and that test." She slid documents toward me. "Sign here and here." The pen felt heavy. Each signature was another brick in a wall I never thought I'd build. But walls, I was learning, sometimes keep the right things safe. I drove through my workday in a fog, checking my phone too often, dreading what I had to do next. When I finally pulled into our driveway that evening, Paula's car was already there. The house lights glowed warm and familiar through the windows. How many times had I come home to this site and felt nothing but peace? I found her in the kitchen, starting dinner. The papers felt like they were burning through my jacket pocket. "Paula." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "We need to talk." She turned, saw the envelope in my hand, and something in her face crumbled. "What is that?" "Legal separation papers, and a motion for paternity testing." "No." She stepped back like I'd swung at her. "No, you can't do this. I already did." "Victor, please." Her voice cracked. "It was a mistake. One stupid mistake. You can't throw away our whole marriage over—" "It's not my mistake to fix." She grabbed my arm. "Think about the children." "I am thinking about them. That's why we're doing this right." The front door banged open, Vince and Patricia tumbling in from the neighbor's house. Paula wiped her eyes quickly, but they noticed. Of course they noticed. Kids always do. Dinner was torture. Patricia pushed her food around, watching us with those big, worried eyes. Vince kept trying to fill the silence with school stories, his voice getting higher and more forced each time we barely responded. After I tucked them in, Patricia asking twice if everything was okay, Vince hugging me longer than usual, I found Paula in the living room. "The test will show the truth," I said quietly. "That's all this is about. Truth." She spun toward me, face twisted. "Truth? You want to destroy our family for your precious truth? You destroyed it the moment you— Get out!" She shoved past me toward the bedroom. "You're ruining everything!" The door slammed so hard the family photos rattled on the walls. Her scream followed. "You're destroying this family!" I stood alone in the dark living room, legal papers crinkling in my grip, listening to my children pretend to sleep upstairs while their mother sobbed behind a locked door. The medical clinic waiting room smelled like anxiety and hand sanitizer. Paula sat 3 chairs away from me, arms crossed, staring at daytime TV like it held answers. We hadn't spoken since leaving the house. What was there to say? The test would do all the talking. A nurse called Paula's name first. Standard procedure, blood draw, paperwork, more paperwork. When it was my turn, the needle barely registered. Funny how physical pain feels smaller when your mind's already numb. The drive home stretched longer than usual. Paula pressed herself against the passenger door like she was afraid I'd contaminate her. The radio stayed off. No point pretending this was normal. Traffic lights caught us 4 times, each stop a frozen moment of not quite looking at each other. "This is cruel," she finally whispered. But I kept my eyes on the road. 7 days crawled by. I threw myself into work, into bedtime stories with Vince and Patricia, into anything that wasn't waiting for that envelope. When it finally arrived, I sat in my truck outside the house for 20 minutes before opening it. The results hit like a hammer. The alleged father, Victor McFarland, is excluded as the biological father. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. Such a small word for such a big truth. Keisha's office was my first stop. She read the results twice, nodding slowly. "This changes everything," she said, already pulling files from her cabinet. "We'll add it to the court documents immediately." That night, tucking in the kids felt different. Patricia wanted 3 stories instead of 2, and I couldn't say no. Vince tried acting tough, but he hugged me extra tight before lights out. They were mine. That much I knew for certain now. The courthouse hallway echoed with whispers and shuffling papers when our hearing date arrived. Paula wore her church dress, the one she saved for important occasions. I recognized the strategy. Look innocent, play for sympathy. Judge Roswell peered over reading glasses as Paula spoke first. "It was just one night," she pleaded, voice trembling perfectly. "A terrible mistake. But breaking up our family isn't the answer." I felt Keisha tense beside me, ready to object. But the judge waved her down. "Mr. McFarland, your response." Standing felt like rising through deep water. I'd practiced this moment in my head 100 times, but now the words came out simpler. "Your Honor, I have documentation." My voice stayed level as I pointed to each exhibit. Bank statements showing the Florida charges, phone records of calls she deleted, her own texts admitting to the encounter. I paused, lifting the final paper. "And now, medical proof that this child isn't mine." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Roswell studied the paternity results, then Paula, then me. Her pen tapped against the bench, once, twice, 3 times. "These are serious matters," she said finally, "especially with 2 children already involved. I'll need more hearings before deciding custody." She raised her hand when Paula tried to interrupt. "We'll reconvene next week." "Dismissed." The gavel crack echoed off the walls. I gathered my papers slowly, watching Paula hurry out with her attorney. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They hadn't shaken once during my testimony. Small victories, I guess. Keisha squeezed my shoulder. "You did well. Very well." But all I could think about was how many more nights I'd have to wait before knowing if Vince and Patricia would stay with me. Another morning in that familiar courtroom. The wooden benches had stopped feeling hard. I'd sat on them so often lately, they were practically molded to me. Keisha stood beside me, her briefcase bulging with evidence of my life as a father. "Your Honor," she began, "Mr. McFarland has been the stabilizing force in these children's lives." She lifted a stack of papers. "I have documentation showing he's handled 70% of school drop-offs and pickups this year alone. Every parent-teacher conference attendance slip bears his signature." I watched the judge review the papers while Paula shifted in her seat. The smell of furniture polish and old books filled my nose, bringing back memories of helping Vince with his reading homework at the kitchen table. "Furthermore," Keisha continued, "Mr. McFarland has managed all household finances, including children's medical expenses." She presented another folder. "Here are receipts from Patricia's orthodontist visits, Vince's annual checkups, all paid from Mr. McFarland's separate account." The judge nodded slowly, examining each document. Paula's attorney tried interrupting, but Judge Roswell held up one hand. "I'm looking at a clear pattern here." My heart picked up speed. Keisha had prepared me for this moment, but hope still felt dangerous. "Given the evidence presented," Judge Roswell announced, "I'm granting temporary custody to Mr. McFarland." She adjusted her glasses. "Mrs. McFarland will have supervised visitation 3 times per week." Paula's gasp cut through the courtroom. I kept my face neutral, just like Keisha had coached me. After signing the order, Judge Roswell looked directly at me. "Mr. McFarland, ensure the children maintain contact with their mother. This arrangement is temporary while we sort out permanent custody." "Yes, Your Honor," I answered. my voice steady despite my racing pulse. That evening, I pulled out the pancake mix as soon as we got home. Vince and Patricia sat at the kitchen counter, watching me pour perfect circles on the griddle. "Can we have chocolate chips?" Patricia asked, already reaching for the bag. "Extra chocolate chips," I said, remembering how Mom used to spell our names in chips when I was their age. The familiar scent of butter and vanilla filled the kitchen, pushing away the sterile courthouse air. "Dad?" Vince's voice was quiet. "Are we really staying here with you?" I flipped a pancake before answering. "For now, yes, and you'll still see Mom during the week." Patricia sprinkled chocolate chips into her pancake. "I like it here." The simple honesty in her voice made my throat tight. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like we might actually be okay. But life has a way of sucker-punching you just when you let your guard down. The next morning, a courier appeared at my door. He handed me an envelope marked "Emergency Motion" in bold red letters. Inside, Paula's latest attack sprawled across legal papers. She accused me of attempting to abandon our unborn child. My coffee cup hit the counter too hard. The paternity test had already proven this child wasn't mine. It was right there in black and white. 0%. But Paula was trying to drag me back in, to trap me with responsibility for another man's child. I stared at those papers, my hands growing cold. The word "our" jumped out like an accusation, mocking the truth we all knew. Paula wasn't just fighting anymore. She was trying to rewrite reality. I held Paula's emergency motion in trembling hands, reading it for the 10th time. The accusation burned. Defendant displays callous disregard for our unborn child. Our. The word made my stomach turn. Sitting at my desk that afternoon, I called Keisha. "They're painting me as some kind of monster." "That's their strategy," Keisha replied, her voice steady as always. "They want to provoke an emotional response. Don't give them one." I rubbed my temples, remembering the whispers I'd heard at school pickup. Paula had been busy, telling anyone who'd listen how I'd abandoned her during pregnancy. "She's turning the whole neighborhood against me." "Let her talk," Keisha said. "The more she spreads these stories, the more ammunition she gives us. We need to focus on documentation. Every text, every email where she admitted the truth." I opened my phone, scrolling through old messages. There it was, from the night she finally confessed. I don't even know his name. It was just one night at that bar. My thumb hovered over the screenshot button. The memory of that conversation hit me fresh. How she'd tried to minimize it, like not knowing the father's name somehow made it better. "I'm sending you everything now," I told Keisha, attaching files. She admitted it was a stranger, multiple times. Later that evening, after tucking in Vince and Patricia, I sat alone at the kitchen table. Their bedtime storybooks still lay scattered on the counter. "Goodnight Moon" was Patricia's current favorite. The house felt too quiet. My case folder sat open before me, full of bank statements and phone records that proved my stability as a father. But would it be enough? The judge's words from the temporary custody hearing echoed in my head. This arrangement is temporary. What if Paula's lies worked? What if the court bought her story that I was heartless for not accepting another man's child as my own? Remember when your kids were little, and you'd check their closets for monsters? This felt similar, except the monster was real. It was the fear of losing them. I picked up a crayon drawing Patricia had made, titled "My Family." She'd drawn me bigger than everything else on the page. The kitchen clock ticked past 11 when my phone lit up with Keisha's number. My heart jumped. She never called this late, unless it was important. "Victor," she said, her voice charged with energy. "I think I found something. Those hotel receipts you sent. There's a pattern that contradicts her entire story. Call me first thing tomorrow." I gripped the phone tighter, hope flickering for the first time in days. Maybe we could still prove what really happened during that Florida trip. The next morning, I met Keisha at her office before sunrise. She had papers spread across her desk, and her eyes sparked with the intensity I'd come to trust. "Look at this," she said, laying out hotel receipts in sequence. Paula claimed she was with her friends the whole time, except for one night. But these charges tell a different story. Room service for one, spa appointments when her friends were supposedly at the beach with her, and bar tabs that don't match her timeline. I leaned forward, studying the dates. She wasn't just covering up one night. Exactly. Keisha pulled out her phone. "And remember those texts you sent, where she admitted everything? I had them authenticated. Between the receipts and her own words, we can prove she deliberately filed false claims." 2 hours later, we walked into the courthouse. The familiar smell of wood polish and anxiety filled my nose as we took our seats. Paula sat across the aisle, wearing a flowing maternity top that emphasized her condition. She wouldn't meet my eyes. When the judge entered, Paula's attorney called her to testify first. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, voice trembling. "Victor's abandoning our unborn child. He's punishing an innocent baby because he's jealous and controlling." My jaw clenched. Keisha squeezed my arm, reminding me to stay calm. "Your Honor," Paula continued, "I made a mistake, but this is still our baby. He's trying to tear our family apart." When it was our turn, Keisha stood. "Mrs. McFarland, you've testified this is Mr. McFarland's child. Is that correct?" "Yes," Paula said firmly. Keisha picked up her tablet. "I'd like to play something." She tapped the screen, and Paula's voice filled the courtroom. "I don't even know his name. It was just one night at that bar. Please, Victor, we can pretend it never happened." Paula's face drained of color. Keisha continued methodically, displaying text messages where Paula had admitted the truth, hotel receipts showing her deception, and the paternity test results. "Your Honor," Keisha said, "Mrs. McFarland didn't just have a one-night stand. She constructed an elaborate deception, used marital funds to facilitate her infidelity, and is now attempting to commit paternity fraud." The judge leaned forward, removing his glasses. His expression had transformed from neutral to stern. "Mrs. McFarland, this court takes a very dim view of false claims and attempted fraud. You filed an emergency motion accusing your husband of abandonment, knowing the child wasn't his. You've wasted this court's time and resources." Paula started to speak, but the judge held up his hand. "I've heard enough. Given the severity of these misrepresentations, I'm prepared to address final custody and property division immediately." I sat straighter, heart pounding. This was it, the moment when all the truth would finally matter. The judge continued, "We'll take a 15-minute recess, and then resolve this matter once and for all." As the bailiff called out, "All rise," I caught Paula's eye. For the first time since this started, she looked afraid. Not of me, of the truth she'd tried so hard to bury. When we returned to the courtroom, my hands were steady. Years of working with precision in tight spaces had taught me how to keep calm when everything mattered. Keisha methodically laid out the financial evidence. "Your Honor, these records show Mrs. McFarland used joint funds not just for the Florida trip, but for expenses clearly related to her activities." She presented credit card statements showing spa treatments, room service, and bar tabs that didn't match Paula's story about group activities with friends. "Furthermore," Keisha continued, "Mrs. McFarland has been shifting money between accounts, attempting to hide assets since the separation began." She displayed bank statements showing unusual transfers. The judge studied each document carefully, occasionally glancing at Paula over his reading glasses. The clock on the wall ticked away 3 hours of testimony, exhibits, and deliberation. I remembered summer afternoons spent teaching Vince to catch a baseball, how patience and focus matter more than force. Finally, the judge set down his pen. Based on the evidence presented, including the paternity test confirming Mr. McFarland is not the father of the unborn child, this court finds Mrs. McFarland's conduct has been deliberate and deceptive. He paused, looking directly at Paula. Your attempts to manipulate both this court and your husband are troubling. Paula gripped the table, her knuckles white. I kept my eyes forward. Therefore, I am granting the divorce on grounds of adultery. Mr. McFarland will retain full custody of Vincent and Patricia McFarland, with Mrs. McFarland granted supervised visitation to be arranged through family services. The words I'd hoped for, delivered in that formal tone. I felt my shoulders relax slightly. Additionally, given Mrs. McFarland's misuse of marital funds and attempted financial concealment, Mr. McFarland is awarded the family home and primary assets. The unborn child has been legally determined not to be Mr. McFarland's, and he bears no financial responsibility. Paula burst into tears, loud sobs that echoed off the courthouse walls. Her attorney patted her shoulder awkwardly. This court is adjourned. The gavel crack felt final. I stood, shook Keisha's hand, and gathered my papers. In the hallway, Paula caught up to me, her face streaked with mascara. Victor, please. She grabbed my arm. We can fix this. I'll do anything. I looked at her hand on my sleeve, remembering how she used to touch me with love, not desperation. I already fixed it, I said quietly, by walking away. But our family, you gambled our family on a lie. I kept my voice low, controlled, and lost. Paula collapsed against the wall, sliding down until she sat on the floor, sobbing. I didn't turn back to look. The sound of her crying followed me down the marble hallway, but with each step, it grew fainter. Sometimes the hardest part of justice isn't winning. It's walking away when you know you're right. 6 weeks after the courthouse, I stood at my grill, flipping burgers while the late summer breeze carried the sound of my children's laughter across the backyard. Vince was teaching Patricia how to do cartwheels in the grass, her braids flying as she tumbled. "Dad, watch this one!" Patricia called out, attempting another wobbly rotation. "Looking good, sweetheart." I gave her a thumbs up, remembering how Paula used to help her practice. The memory didn't sting like it used to. The house behind me felt different now, lighter somehow, like the weight of lies had physically lifted from the walls. I'd repainted the kitchen last weekend, covered up the old family photos with new ones of just the three of us at the park, at soccer games, making silly faces over breakfast. Honest moments, every one of them. Grace, another soccer mom, had mentioned seeing Paula at the grocery store yesterday. She was living in a small rental across town, working extra shifts at the hospital to make ends meet. The baby, a boy, was colicky and kept her up most nights. Between the long hours at work and the demands of a newborn, she barely had energy left for her scheduled visits with Vince and Patricia. "Mom canceled again," Vince had said last week, trying to sound tough about it. But I caught him later in his room, staring at his phone, waiting for a text that never came. Patricia was more direct with her hurt, asking why Mommy didn't want to play anymore. I pulled the burgers off the grill and called the kids over. "Who wants cheese on theirs?" "Me!" They raced to the patio table, previous disappointments forgotten in the promise of dinner. These days, I made sure to fill their lives with as much stability and joy as possible. We had movie nights with blanket forts, Saturday morning pancake competitions, and impromptu dance parties in the living room. The child support now flowed the right direction, garnished from Paula's paycheck after years of her playing shell games with the numbers. Sometimes I wondered if that stranger from the bar ever thought about what he'd helped destroy. Paula never learned his name, and now she'd never get help from him either. But that wasn't my burden to carry. "Can we catch fireflies after dinner?" Patricia asked, ketchup dotting her chin. "Sure can, princess." I handed her a napkin. "Just stay where I can see you." As the sun set, I sat on the back steps, watching them dart around with mason jars, their excited whispers carrying across the yard. A peaceful feeling settled over me, different from the happiness I'd known before. This was earned peace, built on truth and consequences. You know what I learned through all this? Betrayal doesn't define you. How you respond does. I could have raged, could have let bitterness poison everything. Instead, I chose to fight with evidence, to protect what mattered most, to show my children that lies don't win if you stand firm in the truth. Justice didn't make me happy. It made us safe. And I've come to understand that safety is what happiness stands on. Looking at my children chasing fireflies, their jars glowing with captured stars, I felt the last pieces of our new life lock into place. We were going to be all right. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.